are you sleeping? Are you sleeping? I'm Dr. Shelby Harris, Director of Sleep Health at Sleepopolis, and this is Sleep Talkin' with Dr. Shelby. Today, we're talking about narcolepsy with the founder and CEO of Project Sleep, Julie Flygare. But first, does yawning mean you're sleepy? After centuries of debate, scientists really still can't confirm just exactly why we yawn, which is crazy to me. And many take it as a sign of drowsiness. Some take it as a sign of boredom. But is it? One theory is that yawning increases oxygen intake. Another is that it cools the brain. Both would boost alertness during boredom or fatigue. But yawning could also be linked to respiratory function as a way to stretch the lungs and send more oxygen specifically to the brain. There's also this phenomenon of contagious yawning. I get stuck with it all the time. How many listeners, I wonder, have yawned in the last minute since we started talking about it? Could this mean we yawn in order to communicate or show social empathy? Potentially. Even yawning up to 30 times a day is completely normal. I have patients that will say to me, but I'm yawning at times during the day. Is that a problem? It's like, well, let's talk about other factors that could be playing in, not just the yawning. And with so many factors, we just can't say for sure why we yawn. So while you should still keep from yawning from time to time and at the wrong time, like, for example, in the middle of a Zoom meeting, I've been there myself, it doesn't necessarily mean you are tired. Julie, what do you think about that? When you see someone yawning, do you ever think they're tired, bored, not interested? Where do you go with it when you see it?
I think that, yawning probably shouldn't be judged, right?
Yeah,
But I imagine that I still do see it as a sign that someone is disengaged or maybe not feeling well or something, So
yeah,
it's interesting. We should probably normalize it and not think of it
right.
as such a big deal. But I think even a lot of images that people use to indicate that someone is tired shows them yawning.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so many memes and things out there. It's really, it's interesting how much meaning, negative meaning we put on it a lot of times when we should really just normalize it a lot of times. So,
Yeah. Well, and the sleepiness is so invisible. So
mm-hmm.
maybe it's one of the only outward signs that could indicate that someone's tired.
Right.
So, yeah.
If you like Sleep Talking with Dr. Shelby, take a second right now to write us a review on Apple Podcasts. It seems simple, but it helps reach a lot more people to get them the rest that they deserve. And if you're tired of hitting snooze, hit subscribe instead. A new episode of Science-Backed Sleep Tips is available every other Wednesday on YouTube and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Every year on September 22nd, scores of people come together to exchange stories, share research, and build awareness for narcolepsy during World Narcolepsy Day. As part of our commitment to sleep health here at Sleepopolis, we're honored to share this special episode this September in the hopes that more people will learn about and diagnose their own narcolepsy, the chronic sleep disorder experienced by 1 in every 2,000 Americans. But what is narcolepsy? How can you recognize it? And most importantly, how can you prioritize your health if you have it? To unpack these questions, we've invited leading narcolepsy spokesperson and award-winning author, Julie Flygare. Diagnosed with narcolepsy with cataplexy in 2007, Julie's gone on to become a top voice in the field and in 2013 founded Project Sleep, a nonprofit raising awareness about sleep health and disorders. After releasing her award-winning memoir, Wide Awake and Dreaming, Julie went on to create the impactful Sleepwalk event series, as well as the Narcolepsy Not Alone International campaign. Her story has been featured by Mary Claire, ABC, NBC, HuffPost, and the Discovery Channel. And on a personal note, I've known Julie for at least 20 years now. We both share the same alma mater, Go Brown. And although we didn't cross paths while there, I'm a little bit older. We share a good friend who introduced us decades ago when Julie was in the process of writing her book. I've watched her grow over the years to do so many impactful things in the world of sleep, helping doctors to better understand their patients with narcolepsy, to advocacy efforts, to founding Project Sleep. And that has helped so many people with sleep disorders. Julie, we are so glad you're here to raise awareness in honor of World Narcolepsy Day. welcome to Sleep Talking with Dr. Shelby.
Thank you, Shelby. So excited to be here.
I am really glad to have you here. So, as I mentioned in your lengthy introduction, because there's a lot to talk about, you're the CEO and founder of Project Sleep, which I love and we'll dive into more in a minute. And in 2019, you also founded World Narcolepsy Day through Project Sleep. So, to start, I'd like to dive into that. How was your experience meeting and working with hundreds of patients and organizations around the world led to this awareness day on September 22nd?
So after I wrote my book, I was really surprised by how many people were interested in the book around the
Mm,
world. So I would be getting messages from people with narcolepsy, from places like South Korea, Germany, the Netherlands. And so this led to some opportunities to go visit some of these places,
okay.
Australia. And as I started to get to know the organizations and the individuals around the world, you realize that narcolepsy, is so similar no matter where you are. The amount of connection and the sense of community just by being around another person is so unbelievable. Even if you don't share the same language, you
Yeah.
understand each other. And so when I transitioned to be the first staff member of Project Sleep, one of my first goals was creating this World Narcolepsy Day in order to have just like a central opportunity to be raising awareness about this condition around the world. So I worked with all the different nonprofits internationally. I didn't want it to
Yeah.
be like Julie Flygare's Day or even just Project Sleep's event. I want it to be owned by the community.
Mm.
And so it's co-led now by I think about 32 different nonprofits internationally.
Oh, I didn't realize that
Um,
many.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, new ones all the time that are
Yeah.
coming up in different countries, which is really important for people to get organized and to meet people in their own country. And then we have this central opportunity to raise awareness.
So talk to us just about World Narcolepsy Day 2024. Like, what kind of events, initiatives are you most excited about? What things are going to happen? And I know it's like there's so much stuff that goes on online.
Yeah. So for Project Sleep, we have three different events over September. We'll have two story sharing sessions from
Okay.
Rising Voices speakers, one that's from Ireland, another one from New Zealand. And then we will have another event about raising your voice, and
Mhm.
we'll be talking a lot about our Scientific American article that's going to be coming out mid-September. So definitely check out the article in Scientific American, and then that broadcast, featuring Josh Andrews, who's a NFL veteran
I
living
love
with
him.
narcolepsy, and myself. We're both featured in the article, so we're going to have a really
Great.
great discussion on World Narcolepsy Day.
That's awesome. And what's the article like? What should we be looking out for? Is it mostly about narcolepsy, just about Narcolepsy Day? Like what's the article about in general?
Yeah, it's about it features my story and Josh's story, and a research project in the narcolepsy space, and it's to help and about a little bit about World Narcolepsy Day.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
yeah.
I'm going to keep an eye out. As we mentioned in the introduction, you're also the founder of Project Sleep, one of the leading patient advocacy organizations in the sleep space. So, can you talk to us about why did you found Project Sleep? What was that journey like? I can't even imagine just starting a nonprofit. Never done anything like that. How did you do that, and where did that idea come from?
It was pretty organic to start.
Yeah,
I think we were doing these sleepwalks on the National Mall. And at first, I just did it like, inviting my friends to go for a
I
walk around
remember.
the National Mall. And then started to realize as I was filling out paperwork to get permits to do that, they said, "Are you a nonprofit?" That would be deemed more official.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I thought, oh, geez, I guess that would be a good idea. And then, I think though, in a way, what I'd seen in the sleep space was a little bit of a divide between sleep health and sleep disorders. Um, that
Mm-hmm.
that people were either talking about sleep health as if sleep disorders didn't exist, or they were talking about very specific sleep disorders.
Yep.
And for me, one of the biggest burning issues is the many, many, many millions of Americans who are undiagnosed with sleep disorders
Yep.
out there, living maybe not to their full potential, driving, drowsy, all sorts of hard things. And for those people, I really wanted to help them get a diagnosis. So I think that's how Project Sleep is, to try to make sleep cool, but also to try to I think bridge that gap between sleep health and sleep equity and sleep disorders, and make sure that if you talk about one, that the other one's not entirely missed either.
I love that you say that, because that's been my biggest complaint about just being on the sleep medicine side for all these years is that you go, as you see, you go to the sleep medicine conference, the APSS, it's just very sleep disorder heavy, which is fine. But at the same point, we're leaving out the whole sleep wellness side. And then when you go to sleep wellness, they leave out the sleep disorder side. And all of it is important. And we want to make sure that if someone is struggling with their sleep, that, they're just not going to be pushed to just keep a good sleep schedule and avoid caffeine, because that's not going to fix it for someone who has a chronic sleep disorder. So I love that you're saying that. I think it just gets missed way too often. Now, within Project Sleep, I know you've been doing a lot of work trying to start a sleep program within the CDC. So talk to me more about that initiative, because I've seen how active you've been. It seems really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that was when I founded Project Sleep, and you have to fill out paperwork and say, where do you think you're going to get money to do your work? And one of the foundational structures usually of a nonprofit in the healthcare space would be able to be getting government grants to be able to do some of the work we'd like to do. And that just really doesn't exist for sleep. And so it kind of just has always been on my radar. And eventually, about 5 or 6 years ago, we really launched a sophisticated advocacy program and started getting more involved on Capitol Hill. And we run the Sleep Advocacy Forum now, bringing the different sleep organizations together.
Yeah.
And after building up all of this, it's finally time that we are trying to make real progress on this issue that I'd seen since, I'd founded Project Sleep, which is to try to create a home for sleep education and awareness, public education, but also healthcare provider education at the CDC. And so I think it's a huge missing link. Often people say, what would you do if you could have some big sleep health campaign or sleep disorder campaign? But a lot of these things take resources. And in other areas, the CDC is funding programs, like even for epilepsy awareness. It has a line item for, I believe, $11 million at the CDC that helps to fund epilepsy awareness. And there's nothing for sleep health or sleep disorders.
The thing that we all do or should do is the thing that we don't really talk about all that much. That's really, I love that you're doing this work. What is your overarching kind of goal with it? Where do you see it going?
Well, so right now we have one co-lead on the bill to create that program at the CDC, and we're looking for a co-lead, and then we're hope to introduce the bill this fall.
Awesome.
And then we'll have other members of Congress join it. So, and then pass it through Congress, and that will help to establish that program at the CDC. CDC works differently than NIH. Like Congress for the NIH gives NIH a bunch of money, and then NIH kind of gets to decide how they, you apply for grants, and but the CDC is a little bit more of on a line item budget. And so if you don't have that program, they don't spend money on it. So that's why Congress has to establish a line item for, sleep health and sleep disorders awareness at the CDC.
Awesome. Something that differentiates Project Sleep from some of the other groups is its approach and focus on storytelling. I have so many patients that I've seen over the years who just feel very alone, and they don't feel like anybody else really can relate to their experience, which is why I love your book so much and recommend it to every single patient that I'm seeing when they're diagnosed or about to be diagnosed. I love the idea of storytelling. Tell me about the storytelling program within Project Sleep, why you started it, what benefits you see it doing for other people.
Yeah, so when I decided to write my book, I knew I had a creative nonfiction background. I thought I could, write a pretty good book, but it's not like I had what I thought was like the most compelling or most interesting story. It's just the story I had. So I've been really grateful after the book to be able to speak and gain a lot of experience working with the media. But I knew that other people's stories were so interesting and different, and the importance of different
Mm-hmm.
stories. So I didn't need everyone to hear my story. We needed to hear many more different stories. So that was one of our first really sophisticated programs that we developed at Project Sleep, was the Rising Voices program. We modeled it after a lot of different other storytelling programs that
Okay.
had scientifically showed that like NAMI's In Your Own Voices program, it
Yeah.
shows that someone's opinion um, would change before and after hearing the presentation about someone, in that case with a mental illness. So for
Mm-hmm.
this, we first started it with just narcolepsy, and now we've expanded to all sleep disorders. And we're always looking for new advocates. It's a summer training program, so they it's online,
Yeah.
and people attend like a month-long training, and they get feedback from Lauren, who's our program manager, and then they end up with like a 25 to 30-minute presentation about their story that then
Yeah.
they can go and share with at high schools or nursing schools or many different places. So I think we kind of forget the importance of story sometimes in the medical field, and
Mm-hmm.
how much more memorable it is when you see a face and you hear
Yeah.
people's in particular stories, is the way that we often learn. So yeah, I'm really, really proud of that program. Now we have over 160 Rising Voices trained speakers and storytellers around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just, so many of them that are out there doing great work.
Are there certain sleep disorders, areas of sleep that you need more people to be talking about?
Yes, definitely. We
Yeah.
really need more people. We don't have anyone yet with insomnia that would like to
Right.
participate. And we do have a few people with sleep apnea. We've had one person with REM sleep behavior disorder, but and idiopathic hypersomnia and narcolepsy, of course.
Okay.
But I think we'd love to have someone with insomnia and any other sleep disorder.
So, to my listeners, and I know I have a lot of insomnia listeners because of my specialty, consider doing this. The more there really aren't even any outreach groups really for insomnia. It's so interesting, like, and it's such a huge issue. So consider it. We really need to be doing more about insomnia when it comes to awareness. And I think also with the storytelling, at least as a psychologist, even if your story is not the same, there's some sort of relating that goes on to it that helps someone feel like you're like narcolepsy, not alone. And people don't feel as alone when they hear other stories. So we've been talking about a lot about narcolepsy. Let's educate listeners because there are probably a lot of people listening who don't know as much about narcolepsy. So let's talk about the disease itself and the disorder. So how would you describe narcolepsy? What would you say are the main symptoms? How is it diagnosed? What are some of the issues with diagnosis? We've gone through, there's so many issues. So tell me the symptoms and what people might want to be looking out for.
Yeah, I think, initially, I think most people want to know if I'm going to fall asleep while I'm standing or in the middle of
Mm-hmm.
this conversation. They think of it probably from movie and TV portrayals that it's like an attack of sleep, like that I would just be fully conscious and then
Yeah.
just fall over asleep. And that wasn't what happened to me. I was in law school, and initially I really just thought I'd somehow lost my willpower, or I just wasn't meant for law school. I was having trouble remembering what I was reading. So my eyes were open and I was reading a legal case,
Mm-hmm.
and it was probably pretty boring. But I just couldn't remember what I'd read. And so that was just really invisible and hard
Yeah.
for me to understand that it was connected to my sleep, because I actually thought I was a great sleeper. I could sleep well at night. I knew I needed a good amount of sleep, so I was probably sleeping like 8 to 10 hours a night. Um, but then I had other strange things. So
Okay.
my knees started buckling when I laughed, and I knew that was strange right away. And that was about when I was 21 years old. I just graduated from college. And, um, just little jokes with friends, I would feel my knees slightly give out. And that started to affect other parts of my body. Like if I was holding a glass at a party, and someone made a joke, I almost like fumbled my glass for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was actually kind of actually falling forward. As it got worse, I'd actually kind of stumble or collapse forward a little bit.
Yeah.
So that was strange. I didn't think that had anything to do with my sleep. I didn't feel sleepy.
Right.
I just felt like my body wasn't cooperating.
Right.
And it was always when I laughed. Um, and then another strange thing, which I didn't connect at all either, was I often thought, starting especially when I was around 21 and I'd just graduated from college, thinking that a burglar was breaking into my apartment and coming in to attack me in my bedroom.
Hmm.
And then not being able to move or get away from him and feeling very scared, and then realizing there hadn't been a burglar. And I'd had plenty of dreams before and nightmares, but this felt different. It felt like it was something that was happening in the actual
Yeah.
room where I was sleeping. I didn't really know what to make of these things, and I honestly did not connect the dots between them.
Yeah.
I thought they were all like separate issues. And it was eventually, actually, I was a big runner at the time, and I had runner's knee. And it was a sports therapist at Boston College who I was seeing about my runner's knee. She was asking me lots of questions about my knees, and she said, "Do your knees ever buckle?" And I said, "Well, this thing happens when I laugh, my knees buckle, but it has nothing to do with my running." And she thought she'd heard of that and that it was called cataplexy. Um,
Unbelievable.
yeah, right. And I'd actually, two primary
Unbelievable.
care doctors already,
Yeah.
I'd kind of like tried to bring this up to, and they had missed it
Yeah.
or hadn't really thought of this. And so I went home and I Googled the word cataplexy and saw it was this form of muscle weakness, triggered by emotions
Yeah.
like laughter. And I was like, oh my God, that's exactly it. And then that I found out that it was something that, for the most part, only happens with narcolepsy.
Yeah.
I thought, I can't have narcolepsy. That's a joke about someone falling asleep while they're standing. But then when I read
Yeah.
the real symptoms of narcolepsy and saw, oh, excessive daytime sleepiness. Oh my gosh, like, I'm having trouble getting through law school. I was having trouble driving in the morning, just 15 minutes to school in the morning. I started to like feel like I couldn't make that
Yeah.
short drive. And then hypnagogic hallucinations and sleep paralysis, this feeling like, something's happening that feels very real.
Not being
And
able to
not
move
being
your
able,
body.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So pretty quickly, once I found the right terms, I knew that's what I was experiencing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been so striking because I think most people are just so surprised to learn about the real symptoms and how
Yeah.
different it really it is than what we kind of perceive it to be in our culture.
And cataplexy can be, it's found, what percent of patients with narcolepsy have cataplexy, would you say? Because it's not everyone.
Yeah, I'm not really sure anymore with the literature. I think
I
at one
know.
point I saw something that said 60% of people
Exactly.
have narcolepsy with cataplexy, and then there's also narcolepsy without cataplexy. I'm not sure exactly what percentage now people are saying.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's idiopathic hypersomnia as well, which, is, I'd say, we're all kind of a part of this hypersomnia family.
This excessive sleepiness, right? And when it comes to cataplexy too, I think it gets missed a lot of times, like you were saying, but because it can be very subtle. So I've had patients with just like a little bit of drooping in the mouth, and it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be laughter. Is the most sensitive and specific of things that, so I will always say to someone when I'm asking, like, do you ever notice if you tell a joke or hear something really funny, you have any weakness in your body? But it can be a strong emotion, whatever. It can be negative or positive, but the laughter is a really common one. But yeah, it can get missed so often, and we see it mostly in narcolepsy. So
Yeah.
once you figured out what was going on, then what were like the next steps? Like how did you end up finding an actual doctor? And what did you do for
Yeah.
treatment and testing?
Yeah, I got really lucky. Looking back, I didn't realize
Yeah.
at the time how lucky I was, but I had a friend one of my best friends in law school, and still one of my best friends. I said, I think I might have narcolepsy, and she said, oh, my mom's best friend is a narcolepsy, not a narcolepsy, sorry, a sleep researcher in San Diego, and maybe you could talk to her.
Hmm.
And so that turns out that was Sonia Ancoli Israel. Um,
Major person in the sleep field, just for anyone
yeah,
listening.
yeah. I had no idea I
Yeah.
was, talking to like the, Shiro of sleep
Yeah.
research.
I must
And
have yeah. I must have
yeah,
quoted
so
her like a billion times in my dissertation. So very lucky you had that connection. Yeah.
yeah. And so I was able to talk to Sonia, and she put me in touch with Dr. Thomas Scammell at Harvard, at Beth Israel, which was literally like 3 blocks from my apartment in Boston. It was
Good.
unbelievable, like how, so I was able to see him really quickly. And I still had to wait a few months for the sleep study, the 24-hour sleep
Hmm.
study. Which was at the time, I thought that was way too long to have to wait because I was going to take care of this whole
Yeah.
narcolepsy thing over the summer.
Yeah.
This was going to be like my summer problem I was going to deal with. And by the time I started my second year of law school, I'd be like all better. That was
Yeah.
that was my plan in my head. And then, so I was diagnosed just about 3 weeks after that. I just turned 24 years old. And, in the first few weeks of my second year of law school, I returned to get the official diagnosis from
Yeah.
Dr. Scammell. And he was just so excited by the results of my sleep study that I'd gone into REM sleep so quickly and all of my naps that
Because
this
it was
was
so
narcolepsy on
conclusive.
paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And medications, do you find that they're helpful for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think, at first, when Dr. Scammell described the different treatment options, I was waiting for the good one, the easy one.
Hmm.
And it was just surprising to me how I think I realized like the low for me really came a few months after my diagnosis of realizing there wasn't really a cure
Yeah.
and it wasn't going to be easy. To manage the medications is a lot of work, and
Yeah.
especially the first few years as I was getting used to them. So I am lucky that I do respond well to some of the current treatments that are available. So my level of functioning and my ability to do things like play a lot of tennis, and I've run 4 marathons. Like I know that I've been very lucky to respond well to the treatments
Yeah.
and not to have any other conditions as well, because a lot of people have other conditions that they have
Yeah.
to take into consideration. So but it's important for people to know that treatments are out there because there's hope. So getting a narcolepsy diagnosis doesn't just mean that that you're going to have something like negative on your record. It's
Mhm.
important to take that step because you can find some improvements with treatments.
Can you talk to me just briefly about the media? Because I know we did a project together on that. So tell me about how narcolepsy is depicted in the media and like what we're doing with that project.
Yeah. So, we've done a few things together. We've done a project about
Hmm.
helping journalists to make that connection because there seems to be a lot more sleep health articles
Yeah.
in the media. But often they don't even mention sleep disorders. And
Yeah.
I truly believe that a lot of people that are attracted to reading the sleep tips and what can I do better about my sleep or what
Hmm.
kind of mattress do I need or that those people might actually have a diagnosable condition. And if it's not even mentioned that sleep disorders exist,
Yep.
and that could be something that, someone should, like, I think in every kind of sleep listicle or, 10 tips about sleep, they should always, one line at the very least should be about sleep disorders
Yep.
existing and that you should see a sleep specialist to find out if you could
100%.
have one because you don't know. Like I didn't know that
Yeah.
my brain didn't go into the right form of sleep at night. Like there was no
Yeah.
way for me to know that like without going to a sleep specialist. So yeah, so we've had some really good results from that of seeing some articles come out from
Hmm.
journalists that
I've gotten
have
some
now.
requests. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And then now, next step for us is to really work with Hollywood.
Hmm.
So, that's our latest and greatest. We're so excited to be launching an initiative with USC's Norman Lear Center. And they are
Awesome.
doing a project with Project Sleep to get accurate storylines about sleep disorders
Good.
into TV shows. So we're really excited. We're just at the very beginning of this 2-year project, and we're just so excited. Not only to have more accurate portrayals out there, so that people can say, "Oh my gosh, I guess maybe I could have narcolepsy, or I could have sleep apnea,"
Hmm.
but also just like for those of us that live with these conditions. Uh, they're often used as punchlines
Yeah.
or as disparaging, put downs. And so imagine, just how we walk through our lives as people with narcolepsy. I think that this work will also help to reduce stigma for
Awesome.
people that live with these conditions. So we're really
Awesome.
excited.
So, what kind of lifestyle changes or resources do you want to recommend to people who are living with narcolepsy that might help either improve their sleep or manage their symptoms? Because that's really what a lot of it's about. So, to manage their symptoms more effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really individualized
Yeah.
question, and because energy in and of itself, and what gives you energy, and what takes away energy.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I really focus on helping people find support, finding social support, and finding other people that live with the condition. That isolation is something that I think is worse than any of the actual
Yeah.
symptoms of the condition. When people feel alone, like imagine going to medical school alone,
Yeah.
or imagine going to undergrad alone. Like, how do you learn? How do you become, um, empowered to, or to know that there's role models, that people are doing well out there? So connecting people with other people that live with the condition, or finding that community through nonprofits like Project Sleep, but there are other great nonprofits. In the US, there's
Mm-hmm.
Narcolepsy Network, Wake Up Narcolepsy, the Hypersomnia Foundation. And then,
Yeah.
as I mentioned, there's organizations around the world. So I really would focus on trying to help people find those social connections so they don't feel alone, as an important first step.
Yeah. And if you're trying to find a doctor who is well versed in narcolepsy, that can be hard as well. So those foundations and those organizations, I would think, I know I work with a lot of them. I work with you guys as well. So do you think that they would be good resources to find physicians who would be better suited to treat narcolepsy?
Yeah, in some cases, we have the sleep helpline, which
Yeah.
is a navigational support. We don't actually recommend specific doctors right now. We'd love to in the future.
Hmm.
But right now, what we do is we do have resources for people to kind of like interview their doctors and to see what their experience
That's
is,
great.
and what kind of questions that you should ask them about their experience, but also what kind of questions you should ask about at any stage.
Yeah.
I didn't even know the right questions to ask my doctor. It's questions around like, will my medication, have any issues with birth control? Like, these are very
Hmm.
practical questions. So
Oh,
we have
yeah.
those kind of resources on our website and through the sleep helpline to help people navigate their appointments better, hopefully.
That's awesome. Because as I always say, you're the consumer. So don't be scared to ask your physician specific questions. And if they are offended by it, that is not the physician that you should be seeing, for sure. So, Julie, we always like to end with something to sleep on. One last point you want to share or make with anybody looking to change their sleep habits. And when it comes to narcolepsy, this World Narcolepsy Day coming up, do you have a final thought for the audience, giving everything we've discussed, like something for them to sleep on?
I just say, thank you for taking an interest in narcolepsy. It's not all that rare.
Yeah.
And if you say that, I'm the first person you've ever heard of that lives with narcolepsy, I guess my thought would be, I'm probably not. It's just a very invisible condition, and people with
Hmm.
narcolepsy are your friends. They're in your schools, they're at your work, and you may not know it. And so by sharing what we're posting, you can actually, help to reach a lot of people, and really thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for being here, Julie. I really do appreciate it. This is such an important thing to be talking about. And with World Narcolepsy Day on September 22nd, it's just the perfect time to put all these important points and possible sleep solutions out into the world. So thank you again, Julie. I really do appreciate it. You are truly changing the face of sleep medicine, whether you realize it or not. Thanks for listening to Sleep Talkin' with Dr. Shelby, a Sleepopolis original podcast. Remember, if you're tired of hitting snooze, hit the subscribe button or follow right now in YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening. And for even more sleep tips, visit sleepopolis.com and my Instagram page at SleepDocShelby. Today's episode was produced by Ready Freddy Media. Our Senior Director of Content is Alana Nunez. Our head of content is Molly Stout, and I'm Dr. Shelby Harris. Until next time, sleep well.